Hello and welcome to the Great White North, your destination for the iciest cold takes from the frozen wastelands of the North. I'm your host, Charles Constantine, and with me is NP. Say hello, NP.
Hello, and Happy New Year.
And yeah, Happy New Year. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a few weeks. You have some good holidays though?
Yeah, it was nice. I think it was nice to take a break from recording over the holidays and focus on family and some personal pursuits. Dial back in, and hopefully we give you guys some more solid content in the new year. How about you? How was your holidays?
Yeah, I feel mentally refreshed. I feel like a old skin layer came off like a snake,
Yeah,
Ready to do
yeah,
some new stuff. Vrill's starting to seep back into me. Everything's going good.
yeah. I feel like there's like a lot of energy coming into 2023 here. Got to capitalize on it though.
But meanwhile, and while I was waiting for that, I watched quite a bit of TV over the break. I
What'd
watched
you
uh,
watch?
I watched Due South a couple episodes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one. It's a
No
Mountie,
idea.
and it's from the '90s. It's a cop dramedy,
Okay.
and it's a Mountie in Chicago. He lives in a part of Chicago that's so bad that even the crack dealers don't go there. It says, but he's such an innocent, like strong, naive kind of. He's almost a buffoon, but he's also like a super cop. He could just
Yeah,
he tracks people down by like sniffing stuff. He's from the Yukon, right? So he's a good tracker, and he's
kind of like the My Name Is Nobody kind of thing. Remember from when we watched those westerns?
yeah, something like that. He's like so nice to everyone. They're all just like slamming their doors in the like hovel he lives in, and he's like, "Hello, Mr. Peterson. Hello, Miss Schreier, or whatever." And just he's got a dog named Diefenbaker.
Okay, yeah.
It's a lot of Canadiana, and I would say uh, we get tired of some of those stereotypes that don't really apply to us, the nice guy thing and things like that. But overall, it's a very flattering picture, loving portrayal, full of good humor. I'd recommend it. It's very cozy watching. Good to watch, like as you're
Yeah, I like that
going to
kind of
sleep
stuff.
or something like that. And then I watched Downton Abbey, which is, I guess, the whitest show of the 21st century. It's
Yeah, I've never seen that. I thought that was like an
it's not so
old
old.
show.
It's from like 2010ish.
Huh.
So, but from that, I got a bit of a take from it. So in Downton Abbey, it's talking about it's a count, Lord Grantham or whatever, and he lives with his family in a big mansion and a big estate, and they have to take care of their tenants, and all the servants downstairs have their drama too, and his daughters. It starts out almost like Pride and Prejudice, but quickly the Titanic sinks, First World War happens, and it starts to change there, and they're trying almost desperately to cling on to their old traditions. Is basically technique and American influence and things like this start to erode it. Um, but what struck me the most, I was watching this with Hippie Girl, of course. It's not the kind of thing I'd necessarily watch alone. It's a good show, though. I'd recommend it. There's They have a way of doing everything, and if ever you don't know, you can ask like the butler, Mr. Carson. You can be like, "Oh, would it be proper to write a letter of thank you?" And he'd be like, well, I dare say it would be. Like, of course you have to. Like, there'd be no question, right? You use this fork for this, you use that fork for that. This wine served with this course, and they're very fussy about the etiquette and the protocols, right?
Yeah, you gotta have your manners. 'Cause
Right. And the hippie girl and me were started thinking like, wow, it's crazy how little of that we have. But even as we were kids, we're like, I remember after like my first communion, my mom making me sit down to write thank you letters or something like that to all the gifts
yeah,
I'd done. This sort of thing. And I mean, I had a Protestant culture kind of on my dad's side and Catholic on my mom's, but they each had their own. But they were each possible to navigate because my parents could tell me the basic correct way of acting. And we were remarking on just how much that's disappeared and how much extra brain energy that is. And no wonder people like to lie on the couch and all that, because there's actually like
yeah,
there's no constriction to your action, and so it's just this sort of infinite soup. So she was talking about being at like a Zen retreat, hippie that she is, and how on that it's this monastic kind of life for a little bit, and you bow 3 times, you spin around twice, and then you go do a walking meditation, you ring a gong, and it's all got to be in this perfect order. And that's all like it takes care of all the physical and protocol elements of your day, so your brain can be fully fixated on well whatever it is you're doing in Zen retreat, like being nothing or whatever it is. Regardless, yeah, it's outside of jail. I don't know anywhere in society that still has this.
Yeah, well, that's something I've been thinking about this past while as well. All the extra effort that's to go into forcing yourself into routines and teaching discipline and all these sorts of things, and um, especially in our sphere where you're looking for a tradition and you're looking for guidelines, suddenly you realize, oh, like I don't know any of this stuff. And then you have to learn it all from scratch. And like you said, the brain power you have to put in when you could be doing other things. It's just the same thing with mass, with going to church. There's a certain way that the mass is structured, and it has a liturgical cycle, right? So it's a cycle over the year that repeats, and you follow it based on the set guidelines, and you get into a groove of how these things work, and it's sort of ritualistic. But then for someone who's been out of the mix for so long and comes back into the mix, um, you're like, you have to work hard to figure out how it all fits together. And um, most people throughout history were just born into something, and then they just picked it up as they grew into adulthood, and then that became their cycle. They were part of that cycle as they went through their day-to-day lives. And so I think most people now, like you said, they have none of that. So it's not like freedom to choose the cycle you want to choose, or freedom to make your own. No one does that. No one makes their own. No one chooses their own, because part of the process is just being born into it, and living it as the default.
Furthermore, it's intersubjective stuff. You can't have an etiquette of one. There's no etiquette on
Yeah,
a desert island. You need other people to buy into it.
yeah, and I think that's a really good point. Yeah. The idea that each person just chooses their own path, um, and is like this enlightened individual, picking and choosing. Obviously, anyone that's been in this space for any amount of time understands why that's silly. But when you think about it on that next level, like, what do you eat? What does that even mean? Like, that doesn't actually mean anything. Like, picking and choosing, like as your own rational investigator, like that's just nothing. Unless you're like, I mean, Descartes, he tried to do that. He's like, I'm going to start an entire
Hmm.
philosophical understanding of things from scratch, and like throw all my biases out the window, my prejudices out the window, and then like build something up from my own first principles. But like, sorry, you're not 180 IQ Descartes, and even he ended up wrong in a lot of ways. So how does that apply to the majority of people? It's insane.
It's just it speaks to how lost and afraid and alone everyone feels. It would be good for everyone to go to their grandmas and ask them to try and ask them every question you can think of about how to live your life, and write down the matters of protocol. We get up at 7. We eat breakfast. We eat eggs for breakfast. We whatever, all the stupid things that
Mhm.
seem unimportant. But if you
Yeah, I think it's good to drill that stuff and follow it, and then also expect that of the people around you too. I think if like when you get good enough at re-inhabiting that, that routine or ritualistic aspect of life, then it's sort of expecting it of others,
expecting the people who
and then
enter
like,
your domain to follow it.
yeah.
Obviously, when in Rome, but
But even people you see day to day, go after them.
it's you got to be a
Act like
bit.
it's act like
This is the
an
normal way to
etiquette.
act, and if you're not
Yeah,
acting
like
that
what
way,
are you
you're weird.
doing? Like what do
Yeah.
you think you're doing? Like what world are you living in where you think you can act like that? And then watch, suddenly people will start to change. around you and follow suit, and it'll be good for them.
But of course, the final caveat to that is make it based on actual the way we're supposed to act and the actual
Yes,
traditions.
yes.
Whatever you can, yeah. If you try and make it up out of the top of your head, it's going to be silly.
Yeah, it's going to fall apart real quick. Well, let's stay on the topic of sort of traditions or cultures and identities, but we'll make a quite slight pivot to something different. Something I noticed, um, just floating around in different group chats across the internet, especially like the big anonymous group chats, big racist group chats, even whatever you want to call these things. I found it very interesting that you can learn about any culture you could ever imagine, any culture or peoples, just by insulting them. Like I can make fun of Albanians. I can like jump in a group chat and like say some stupid stuff about Albanians, and then suddenly have an army of Albanians attacking you, giving you the entire history, and like here's how you're wrong, here's how our culture really is, here's why we're great, and then this place that I've never even thought twice about in my entire life, I suddenly have their the entire historical records laid before me. I don't need to go to school for this anymore. I just have to insult random people online, and I can learn everything I want about them.
That's an old internet rule that dates back from like the chat board, the bulletin boards. Is that if you want an answer to a question, you don't ask the question, you post the wrong answer or wrong solution.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And all those non-racists miss out on that beautiful tapestry of cultural enrichment.
That's the thing that I find kind of funny about all that is when you engage with these, random people across the internet and you learn all about them, you kind of get it in a completely unfiltered environment. And you can learn the weird little nuances that you never would have imagined. And you probably would have never gotten from a traditional, or at least a modern history textbook, or ethnography of a group of people, because you kind of get this firsthand explanation of things. Obviously, they'll give you historical explanations, but they'll give you that firsthand experience of what they're living in. And this seems to be, in my opinion, other than literally living in the culture and seeing it firsthand, which you need money and resources for that. This seems to be, in my opinion, a great way to learn things about the world that you possibly would have never even encountered anywhere else.
Yeah.
It's like you're doing your personal ethnography just by insulting people in group chats.
So what culture should we do a deep dive on next, Charles?
Huh. That's tough. Maybe you got an idea?
Well, I've always been curious about Croatia because they smell so bad and they're ugly and cowards, from what I understand. Croatians are, I think they're called the dogs of the Baltics. Yeah.
It's the worst beaches in the world.
I hear even Macedonians sort of dunk on them all the time.
Macedonia, that would be an interesting one to. I bet Macedonians, I bet they suck.
Swarthy sons of Turks. Yeah.
There. Now we're gonna have a bunch of Croatians, Macedonians in the comments, losing their minds at us.
Oh, good. Well, I'll bring out the dish rags because they're gonna really shit it up, I'm sure. Yeah, great. Actually, every culture sucks. It's true, and except ours.
That's the thing is, you can always insult someone for something, except your own.
Right. Shoot. No, that's awesome. Oh, I got a poem here for us. Speaking of Canada and all that, as we always are.
Oh, yeah.
So everyone will have heard this one. It's really good for this time of year where it's really cold out. It's by Robert Service, who's an extremely celebrated poet, and to me it exemplifies the Canadian sense of humor. Our kind of it embodies us and our spirit. It's called The Cremation of Sam McGee, and you can listen to Johnny Cash read it if you put it on YouTube right now and then skip a couple minutes ahead, or you can just listen to me read it. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who moil for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was the night of the marge of Lake Labarge I cremated Sam McGee. Now Sam McGee was from Tennessee, where the cotton blooms and blows, while he left his home in the south to roam around the pole God only knows. He was always cold, but the land of gold seemed to hold him like a spell, though he'd often say in his homely way that he'd sooner live in hell. On a Christmas day we were mushing our way over the Dawson Trail. Talk of your cold, through the parka's fold it stabbed like a driven nail. If our eyes we'd close, then the lashes froze, till sometimes we couldn't see. It wasn't much fun, but the only one to whimper was Sam McGee. And that very night, as we lay packed tight in our robes beneath the snow, and the dogs were fed, and the stars o'erhead were dancing heel and toe, he turned to me, and Cap, he says, I'll cash in this trip, I guess, and if I do, I'm asking that you won't refuse my last request. Well, he seemed so low that I couldn't say no. Then he says with a sort of moan, it's this cursed cold, and it's got right hold, till I'm chilled clean through to the bone. Yet tain't being dead is my awful dread of the icy grave that pains, so I want you to swear that foul or fair, you'll cremate my last remains. A pal's last need is a thing to heed, so I swore I would not fail, and we started on the streak at dawn, but God, he looked ghostly pale. He crouched on the sleigh, and he raved all day of his home in Tennessee, and before nightfall a corpse was all that was left of Sam McGee. There wasn't a breath in that land of death, and I hurried, horror-driven, with a corpse half hid that I couldn't get rid because of a promise given. It was lashed to the sleigh, and it seemed to say, you may tax your brawn and brains, but you promised true, and it's up to you to cremate those last remains. Now a promise made is a debt unpaid, and the trail has its own stern code. In the days to come, though my lips were dumb, in my heart how I cursed that load. In the long, long night, by the lone firelight, while the huskies round in the ring howled out their woes to the homeless snows, oh God, how I loved that thing. And every day that quiet clay seemed to heavy and heavier grow, and on I went, though the dogs were spent and the grub was getting low. The trail was bad, and I felt half mad, but I swore I would not give in, and I'd often sing to the hateful thing, and it hearkened with a grin, till I came to the marge of Lake Labarge, and a derelict there lay. It was jammed in the ice, but I saw in a trice it was called the Alice May. And I looked at it, and I thought a bit, and I looked at my frozen chum. Then here, I said, with a sudden cry, is my crematorium. Some planks I tore from the cabin floor, and I lit the boiler fire. Some coal I found that was lying around, and I heaped the fuel higher. The flames just soared, and the furnace roared, such a blaze you seldom see, and I burrowed a hole in the glowing coal, and I stuffed in Sam McGee. Then I made a hike, for I didn't like to hear him sizzle so, and the heavens scowled, and the huskies howled, and the wind began to blow. It was icy cold, but the hot sweat rolled down my cheeks, and I don't know why, and the greasy smoke in an inky cloak went streaking down the sky. I do not know how long in the snow I wrestled with grisly fear, but the stars came out and they danced about, ere again I ventured near. I was sick with dread, but I bravely said, I'll just take a peep inside. I guess he's cooked, and it's time I looked, then the door I opened wide. And there sat Sam, looking cool and calm, in the heart of the furnace roar, and he wore a smile you could see a mile, and he said, please close the door. It's fine in here, but I greatly fear you'll let the cold and storm. Since I left Plum Tree down in Tennessee, it's the first time I've been warm. There are strange things done in the midnight sun by the men who've moiled for gold. The Arctic trails have their secret tales that would make your blood run cold. The northern lights have seen queer sights, but the queerest they ever did see was that night on the marge of Lake Labarge I cremated Sam McGee. That's that.
That's awesome.
Do you like that one? You'd heard it before, I'm sure.
No, I honestly have never heard it before.
It's an absolute classic. I think they did a nice, there's been many renditions of it done. CBC had a nice animated one somewhere. You can find them all online, I'm sure. But Robert Service, he's got that sense of humor. He's got the good it doesn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah, like you definitely should be putting a little bit of effort into examining our stuff that's out of our culture, the poetry, the uh, the history, because we spend a lot of time looking at old culture. We're like, oh, look at the classics, look at the ancients, and obviously you should pay attention and have an understanding of the great works, but also you should be dialed into what comes out of your own country, your own culture. So that kind of stuff is it's nice to hear that, even me, like first time. So
Good. Well, that makes it worthwhile then. Yeah, well, there's so much Canadian poetry, literature, all that. I'm gonna make an effort this year to try and maybe put forward a piece each episode.
yeah, that'd be good. Because I'm not sure too many other people have given that back. I mean, if there are other places that are doing a good job of uncovering that stuff, then send that our way. I'd love to hear it, but I haven't come across anything so far. Uh, all right, let's move on. Let's jump on to the next topic. We'll do this. This is a really creepy one, in my opinion. I think you were agreeing with me. Like really
Yeah,
strange
super creepy.
behavior, and this is a lot of stuff that we've been talking about with hyper reality or the hyper world and these weird parasocial relationships that the internet. I want to say it's not the internet itself, because the internet you could say is to some extent just a tool. I know you have a lot of things to say on that, but for all intents and purposes,
Yep.
it's a neutral playing field. But a lot of people interact with this in irresponsible ways. Say this is an example of that. And we'll leave the link. I think it's a TikTok. We'll leave that link in the description, so you can watch that right now. But it's basically this. I could say a mommy blogger type TikToker who has twin daughters, and she's showing her lives of her twin daughters growing up, like fun things, family content, right?
Nothing
With my
unusual
with my
there.
girls growing up.
Although, maybe
Um,
like it's very a common thing to do. I mean,
yeah,
we could
yeah.
take issues with this, but this is not the weird part of the story yet, for sure.
No, the weird part of the story is when she explains what's been happening to her recently, with weirdos contacting her about her children. And so she decided to stop showing her twin daughters' faces in any of her TikToks. And the responses got even creepier. And it's not what you think. It
Yeah.
turns out there's this attachment that's been built between not not men. I'm sure there's weird like pedophile type dudes in the mix interested in this stuff, but the main negative response that she got seems to be from like childless, middle aged. It's not like the woman that she uses on the call as the example. Sounds like a 30-year-old, like childless woman who is very upset that she doesn't get to see these two kids in these videos anymore, because she feels like she has grown with these kids. She feels like she's a part of the development of these twin daughters' lives,
Yeah.
and she feels very attached to them. And so it felt, according to this anonymous, call-in, who's upset about this, it felt like she's losing an important part, an integral part of her life, by not being able to see these kids and
All
see them
right.
do what they're doing anymore.
Yeah. So we've seen parasocial relationships a lot over the last few years. For those who might not know, a parasocial relationship's one you develop with, say, like an online celebrity or something, where it feels like they're your friend, but they're not. And I have one with Rich Evans, for instance, whose laughter delights me every time I turn on YouTube. But it's a bit creepy just on the face of it. I would never like write Rich Evans even a YouTube comment, never mind fan mail, because I'm not demented. But if someone did, it would even be, you know, I don't know. It'd be like Stan. At the worst case, it'd be like Stan writing Eminem there in that classic song would be a terrible one. I have never, till this moment, heard of someone developing a parasocial relationship with other people's kids, like feeling like they're their kids. That is the creepiest shit I've ever heard.
Yeah, and I think the first obvious point to make is, okay, this is someone that should just have their own kids in their own life. Uh, that they should be doing their own kids right now. They should be dealing with raising their own kids. Um, but then the next level on that is it speaks to the importance of raising a family in your life. Like, obviously, this person is missing something that they should have had, and the fact that they don't have it and they're seeking it out through alternative means, like some popular TikTok mom, means that, regardless of what they're doing with their personal life, they've been engaged in something that they feel like they're missing. They find that this is an important, an absolute crucial aspect that is hurtful, is hurting them to lose.
Mm-hmm. Actually, this reminds me of another story told by Carl Pilkington on one of the first podcasts in existence. And he was walking around his council house or whatever around England and in London, and there's a old woman pushing a tram around, and he looks inside, and instead of a baby, there's a bucket with a face painted on it.
Yeah.
It's crazy how people fill these voids.
Yeah, like it just seems like most people don't have an alternative to raising a family.
Did you see the chart that said 30% of millennials don't have a single friend?
Yeah, I saw. I've seen stuff like that, and I've seen like the projections of, especially, I think it's both women and men, but especially women that are likely never going to be married ever.
Oh, what is it?
Crazy.
Right? What number was that? That was just going around. 40% of millennial women will never.
It was close to 40. Yes.
Oh, the political implications of that are actually they're terrifying.
There's the political aspect to that, and there's also, what we're looking at right now.
Right.
There's going to be this massive demand for these parasocial relationships with other people's children, and the woman in this context, the TikTok mom, she takes issue with it and does not want to have these people attached to her children. But there's going to be probably some sort of a market where people are having kids to profit off of the lack of their own children.
Like, you can rent out your kid to, they'll appear on the tablet, and the other person can pretend to be their mom or aunt or whatever for a given amount of time. Something creepy like that.
If it doesn't get regulated like this, it's going to probably get pretty weird. And yeah.
I think there's been another time in history when there was a real shortage of men, which was after the First World War. And so immediately, it was only a few years later that alcohol was prohibited because all these single women suddenly got the vote. The solution to all those single women, I don't think we ran bulldozers over them on the front of tanks as the Gaza Strip. I am not planting that seed like that's the solution now, although I'm just putting it out there. But that wasn't the solution then. I'm not sure what they did about it. What was the solution to those women? Was it just a bunch of spinsters? Did they actually just wreck things for a while?
I'm not too sure. I would say, in a lot of cases, they should just pursue a. I would imagine there's basically two situations here. You become like a wet nurse type of thing, right? So, a maid, or you are a nanny.
Well, you can't be a wet nurse unless you get pregnant.
Oh, well, never mind.
You can be a maid or nanny, though. I know all about this from Downton Abbey.
Maids or nanny, that kind of stuff. Or there's the religious vocation, right?
Yes,
but
the nunneries.
Really,
well, we used to be able to force women into nunneries, and the insane asylums also picked up big time. It occurs to me, in the ensuing years. If you like track out that cohort of single women, insane asylums probably peaked right around when they'd be hitting their 40s and 50s. And so we gave them all
Yeah, like the
hysterectomies
thing
and
is, the
sprayed them
thing
with fire hoses
is
and shit.
the healthy solutions and the genuine solutions, where you have like a religious vocation, or you have a genuine like again a genuine nanny position or care provider position. Those are probably not going to happen, at least in the context that we live in
No.
currently. And uh, so what we're left with is this stuff, where it's just people satiating their desire through the hyperworld.
This is probably why, yeah, this is why Mark Zuckerberg has wasted something like 120 billion, no, $15 billion on his virtual reality world. He's
Yeah,
pretty much flubbed it, from what I understand. But someone, like, I can see why they're all predicting this is going to hit gold at some point, because these women will probably end up retreating into some sort of artificial reality where they do have children. Right now, they're making do with parasocial relationships, but the better we can simulate that for them, the more they're going to pay.
yeah. It just seems like this stuff is so fundamental to your experience that, like, no matter how much technology and distractions, entertainment you build up on top of that to try and avoid it, and pursue your own happiness as like the liberal ideal, it always ends up coming back to fulfilling those basic fundamentals.
Do you know,
Like imagine all that freedom and technology just so that you can simulate the things that you're supposed to be doing anyways.
right. Um, and don't come at me with your outliers. I know there's the odd woman who really doesn't want kids. You don't matter. You're barely
Well, the
registered on
thing
the
the thing with
chart.
those cases, yeah, again, the thing with those cases is you either take the religious vocation and you're a nun and you're a holy person, um, or yeah, you are just so you're like the male who's so just driven about one particular thing that the children doesn't concern you, and you just miss that. But again, those are people that are so geared into their interest and developing that there's nothing outside of it to that person. But again, that, like you said, outlier, that doesn't really account for the
Hmm.
masses that we're talking about.
Um, Fortunately, I see that trend reversing, and I don't see the younger generations quite succumbing to the propaganda the way that the millennial women did. It will probably
Yeah,
be
I
a
agree with
blip.
that. I think that's something to be there's something to be said for the capacity to be, say, it's not tech savvy, but social media savvy. And we've mentioned this on shows before, but like you can kind of just step around internet propaganda and marketing because you've been exposed to it in uh, novel ways that these companies that propagandize you can't really replicate and get in front of. Like we're always a step ahead because we've been so immersed in it uh, that they just don't quite get it to the same extent. For me, you watch a TV commercial and none of that interests you. You know, it doesn't tantalize your desires and force you to go buy things anymore because you've just been
I,
you're so
I
far beyond
I
that.
actually
I
just
think.
had a story rejected, and it's a garbage story. It was rejected for good reason, but the premise was that um, someone based on dimes made an advertisement so persuasive that everyone who saw it had to follow it. So I wrote a little Philip K. Dick style thing where now society's reformed around the ad tells you to go shovel coal and you're happy to go shovel coal, and it tells you to go eat your gruel and eat your gruel.
Uh,
Um, my solution in there was that this weird kind of incel guy feels shame, or he like is introduced to the concept of shame by accident by seeing a dog scratching his ass or something, and so he breaks free, but he's never satisfied again. He's never able to have fulfillment or satisfaction that the advertisements would give him, or the dopamine, whatever. Um, it's a half-baked premise and a half-baked story. I'm not sad it got rejected. It's fun to speculate. What if advertisement was very effective? It's fortunate it's probably only like 5-10% effective, which is still a massively powerful thing and why they dump billions of dollars into it. And it will affect everybody. It does affect me, it does affect you. But certainly to lesser extents than some unaware boomer or whatever.
Yeah, I think the boomers for sure, and the millennials got it worse. They were less, I guess, tech savvy or media savvy than people that were immersed from the most novel aspects. So that being said, we see so many people that have been pushed to extreme actions through media at the same time in the Zoomers as well. But there's a give and take in that, I guess, and I think a lot of people are going to find it easier to dial back into their needs of those fundamentals of the family.
Definitely. It's actually much easier to pick up these millennial women now because a lot of them are actually cluing in at the same time they realize they don't have these kids. Be a little bit sexist on your first date. Like, say you don't think women have to work or should have to work outside the home. Say that you think it's a shame they're not a mother, they'd make a brilliant mother. You know, all this stuff that would get a drink or thrown in your face or a slap 10 years ago is probably the shit to say right now.
Mm-hmm.
It worked for me.
Well, and I think I think you see the speed of what people are realizing the mistakes are is increasing. This is accelerating. I even see a lot more. It used to be all the people that were in on the personal finance and making sure you didn't get to debt and you know, prepping yourself for what the world demands of you. People who, at least before, weren't figuring that out until their mid-20s or 30s a lot of the time. And now you're seeing like high schoolers figure out through the internet, like, oh, I better get my finances set right now. Like you see those guys. See a greater percentage of them figuring that out earlier. So I think a lot of that's accelerating, whether it's the family thing or the finances or whatever the case may be.
The world's moving fast. I don't hold much hope for anyone over 30 at all, just because we're going to be the boomers in about 10 seconds. But but I there's some perennial advice I hope to offer you before an AI takes over my job here. Well, ongoing. I don't mean right at this second. Okay, let's move on.
Did we want to hit these? Do you have any New Year predictions?
Yeah.
Any thoughts for what's coming for us?
Okay, I put some on my channel here. They're pretty half-baked. I just pulled them out of my ass. Well, okay, wait. I'll start with the political one, which is not. I stole this one from Darby, so I'm I'm more confident in it.
All right. You want to go through, and I'll. How about I agree or I disagree?
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, we'll do a hot seat on it. Let me just scroll up. Entertain the people for 10 seconds while I find this.
I got nothing entertaining to give the audience. Filibuster. I don't know. I was reading about John A. McDonald. He's pretty cool.
Indeed.
You know, surprisingly, and you won't hear this from anyone that's giving you history these days, but he was a relatively, as much as he was kind of a crotchety old bastard, an alcoholic, and a lot of issues. He was also pretty caring and compassionate guy. Did you know that one of his children, was born crippled? Was never able to walk her entire life, but he did everything for her. her entire life, and she dictated the letters to her father about, hoping that he would come back home after his long days at the office or at the parliament, and so he said he could spend time with her, read to her, and care for her. So this was a guy that, he wasn't this evil, malignant virus that they tell you. He was someone that had a lot of compassion for even people in the state that his daughter was in, who was terminally crippled for life. So I think there's a lot of really good men despite their flaws throughout our history.
Without a question. Okay, well, here's my political prediction. 2023 spring election, and just you can say agree or disagree, and if you disagree,
Okay.
give me a reason why. 2023 spring election resulting in conservative minority.
Agree.
PPC will go down to 2% of popular vote.
Agree.
NDP will lose seats.
Agree.
Quebec going blue.
Agree.
All right, and then I also predicted that Torontonians will gestate a new anal supervirus in their Turkish baths.
Disagree. And I only say that because that's too optimistic.
All right, then I have some cultural predictions, starting with probably the boldest one, which is that wokeness loses all remaining ground, but its policies remain as part of liberal mainstream.
Yeah, I agree with that.
All right, I said touch ass or some variation replaces touch grass.
Disagree.
Okay, no, now it's not catching on, I guess.
No, I don't see it.
Okay, I'm predicting culturally that extremism in all directions loses popularity, but also that being red pilled on the JQ is no longer considered edgy.
Yeah, definitely. That's 100% true.
All of our cultural points are adopted by the mainstream, but none of the economic or moral policies.
I agree mostly. I think there's going to be a trickling in of some of at least the moral side of things.
Okay, good. Any fronts in particular you see that happening on?
I'm imagining that there's going to be more of more of the pro-family talking points. I imagine that's going to be the main area. Other than that, it's up in the air, but that would be something I think they can't really ignore.
Okay. The rest of these are, scene specific, but I'll put them in here anyway. Blood Satellite gets sponsored by a Croatian VPN service.
I don't think there are any Croatian VPN services.
Okay, contradicting.
But maybe an equivalent.
Okay, well, we'll see who collects that clout. A competitor.
It's gonna turn out all the VPN services are based in Croatia, and then I'll look like a moron.
Well, it's a long bet. Like, you got to give me odds on that one. That's like a 64 to 1 or something like that. Okay, a competitor to Antelope Hill and Imperium Press emerges briefly before the lead guy is discovered to be a gay Jew.
I feel like that
Give me odds. Give me odds on
happened.
That. Did it already happen?
I feel like that's already happened like multiple times.
Well, I'm predicting it happens again.
I feel like some equivalent of that has been on and off.
Yes. Okay, I predict Ethan Ralph has a brief redemption arc spoiled by alcoholism. It's a safe bet, actually. That one's pretty safe.
I feel like, again, that's just like part of the cycle of it.
Yeah, it's a 1-to-1 bet. I predict rather cruelly, and this is not out of malice, that TRS implodes, probably due to personality differences, but that the NJP survives.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's going to go that way or whether it's going to go the reverse, one or the other. It's. I think it's going to just chug along, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, that's a safe bet too. I don't even want to read that one because I don't want to nag them. Patriot Front's going to do good, or it's going to. I'm thinking maintain status quo. I won't say the. Okay, and lastly, Richard Spencer will complete his project of jettisoning all right-wing stances and declare himself a polo shirt Democrat and say that he always was?
Um, I It's fair because he is kind of that alt NBC, but at the same time, I think he was literally just on the show talking about how um, he wants to be evil, like he wants to be the villain of history, arguing with a liberal about how he wants to be some like how the ideal white person is like the enemy throughout history, the villain throughout history. So I don't really think he's completely dropped at least what he thinks are right wing priors.
Okay. Well, hopefully he at least gets some good mushroom Swiss burgers this year. I do wish him that much.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully that will calm him down so he stops being such a
Yes.
weird on all accounts at this point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's more gossipy than we usually are. But those are mostly
Yeah,
jokes. Don't take me too seriously on most of that. The this notion of woke, the one I'd like everyone to take a bit seriously, or at least consider, is wokeness losing its remaining ground, and just how the sort of weirdnesses of the last 5 years will be ingested into culture at large. We've seen them become more mainstream. Red pilled is a mainstream term, etc., etc., etc. And just what the effects of that will be.
yeah, and that's the real key is you need to stop thinking about yourself as being some outlier extremist. You're not. Like stop. Don't. And when you buy into that, you start getting into weird ideas about how I don't know. There's so much weird stuff that you can pick up that's just completely useless. And the reality is, a lot of that wokeness stuff, or whatever you want to call it, the anti-whiteism, no one likes that. It turned like people didn't realize how bad it was when it like was there because they operate in that liberal paradigm where they think, oh, just people being who they want to be and not harming anyone else. But then you see the effects of that down the line. Now that's where what everyone's seeing right now, and the normal person is dropping all of that, and they realize, no, we gotta push back. So stop pretending like you are some unique, uh, esoteric intellectual who's figured this all out just because you rejected the stuff before everyone else. No, like, just be normal with everyone else because the normal position is to reject the anti-whiteness and tranny stuff. Um, like you're normal, so
Yeah, I'm gonna
you always
stay.
say,
Like, I'm gonna become normal politically, but I'm hedging my bet. I want to stay weird and on the fringe. So I've been talking with Sunflower Society and stuff like that, and from our readings on McLuhan and all that, I've just decided to go weird in the most Canadian intellectual weird way possible,
yeah,
which is as a media guru, like Dr. Oblivion on Videodrome. Be like a weird esoteric media analyst.
yeah. Well, that still fits the bill. It's so like being abrasive and like being going to the point where like you are just repulsive to the average person in the other direction. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Avoid that.
he showed me Nick Land's Meltdown, and I
Oh
have to
yeah.
confess I didn't understand a word of it. Like it reminded me of the poems I used to write on acid when I was like 20.
Hmm.
It's not. I don't know what it's about, but I'm gonna deep dive into it until my brain literally turns inside out, like some kind of horrible, bad special effect from the
Well,
'80s.
well, you have fun with that. I don't I have no zero interest in Nick Land. None of that.
I'm gonna at least follow it till I figure out kind of what he's talking about, and then I'll report back.
Fair enough. All right. We'll get that report from you at some point and make the final verdict when we
Yeah,
get there.
yeah. Um. Well, are we gonna do some reading this year? Like, I don't mind. I love these episodes where we just chat about stuff a bit, but we could. It's. I feel like it's maybe time to do another essay or something.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. We'll
actually, there's one I want to cover next week. We'll probably end up putting on here.
yeah, we already had one in the docket there, and I have a lots of we have lots of history that we want to go through. The main issue we're off the main issue we have to overcome is number one, most of the history that I have is not stuff that you can find like being sold anymore. So there would be a sort of a mismatch, one of us having read it and one of us not having access to it. And the other thing is the lack of the uh, the PDF sites. Zed Library,
Oh
LibGen, all that
yeah.
stuff gets taken down. So that makes it harder to coordinate unless we purchase the text. So that will just need some planning and stuff, but we'll definitely have reading and content to be done throughout the year. So we'll figure that out and we'll gear back into that.
Yeah, and yeah, get ready for some Canadian cultural drops. I'm gonna be plucking through my lifelong reading habits and pull out maybe some Stephen Leacock passages, all this stuff that we kind of mentioned. I'm gonna try and actually put it on our show, just because we talk about culture a lot, but then we don't just show the culture, which speaks for itself more often than not.
Mm-hmm. All right, that sounds good. I think that's all we have for today then.
Yeah, that's good. Nice quick episode, and we're looking forward to chatting with you all in the new year.
Sounds good. All right, don't forget to subscribe and like and share with your friends and your family. And
Good
see ya.
night.